One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with an avoidant person is assuming that more effort will create more connection. It seems logical on the surface. If someone is pulling away, you move closer. If communication is fading, you increase communication. If the relationship feels uncertain, you try harder to gain certainty. Yet this instinct, while understandable, often produces the exact opposite result. To understand why, we have to understand how an avoidant person experiences pressure. Most people think avoidants are simply afraid of commitment or incapable of intimacy. That's an oversimplification. Many avoidant individuals deeply desire connection. They want love. They want companionship. They want to feel understood. The challenge is that when emotional intensity rises, they can begin to associate closeness with a loss of freedom, control, or emotional safety. The more they feel someone's expectations pressing against them, the more their instinct is to create distance. Not because they don't care, but because distance becomes their way of regulating discomfort. This is where so many people accidentally sabotage their own position. They interpret withdrawal as a sign that they need to convince, persuade, or prove their value. They send another message, then another. They ask for clarification. They seek reassurance. They try to solve the problem immediately. What they don't realize is that every attempt to force resolution can feel like additional pressure to the avoidant person. Imagine someone standing in a room with only one door. If they begin to feel trapped, their focus doesn't go toward appreciating what's inside the room. Their attention goes entirely toward finding the exit. Human beings have a deep psychological need for autonomy. When that autonomy feels threatened, the desire for escape often becomes stronger than the desire for connection. This principle extends far beyond relationships. Philosophers, psychologists, and behavioral scientists have long observed that people resist feeling controlled. The moment freedom appears restricted, the mind becomes preoccupied with reclaiming it. In relationships, this means that chasing often amplifies the very behavior you're trying to stop. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold, distant, or playing games. That's an important distinction. Creating emotional space is not punishment. It is not a strategy designed to make someone suffer. It is the recognition that healthy connection cannot be forced. Think about the strongest relationships you've ever witnessed. They are rarely built on relentless pursuit. They are built on mutual willingness. Both people choose to move toward each other. When you constantly chase someone who is moving away, you create an imbalance. One person becomes the pursuer. The other becomes the distancer. Over time, these roles become reinforced. The more one person pursues, the more the other feels compelled to create space. Breaking that cycle requires courage because it means resisting your most immediate, emotional impulses. When anxiety appears, your instinct may be to reach out again. When uncertainty appears, your instinct may be to demand answers. When silence appears, your instinct may be to fill it. But emotional maturity often means tolerating temporary discomfort instead of reacting impulsively to it. Creating space sends a powerful message, not through words, but through behavior. It communicates, I respect your freedom, I respect your process, and I respect myself enough not to abandon my own peace in pursuit of immediate validation. That last part is critical, because this isn't just about changing the avoidant person's behavior. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. Many people become so focused on getting someone back that they unknowingly place their emotional well-being entirely in another person's hands. Their mood depends on a text message. Their confidence depends on someone else's attention. Their sense of worth depends on someone else's response. That is a fragile foundation for any relationship. The paradox is that the moment you stop making another person responsible for your emotional stability, you become significantly more attractive. You stop radiating need and start radiating strength. You stop chasing certainty and start embodying confidence. And confidence creates an environment where genuine connection can breathe. Space is not the enemy of love. In many cases, space is the test that reveals whether love has enough room to grow. If someone only moves toward you when you chase them, you haven't created connection, you've created dependence. But if they move toward you when given freedom, you've discovered something far more powerful, genuine desire. And that is the difference worth remembering. Real connection begins where pressure ends. Once you've stopped chasing, and created the emotional space that an avoidant person often needs. The next challenge is knowing what to do when contact does happen. This is where many people make a critical mistake. They understand the importance of giving space, but the moment communication resumes, all of the anxiety, frustration, and unanswered questions come rushing back into the conversation. Suddenly, every message becomes loaded with hidden expectations. Every interaction becomes an attempt to secure reassurance, define the relationship, or recover what feels lost. And while these desires are understandable, they often recreate the same pressure that caused the avoidant person to retreat in the first place. This is why the soft contact method matters. At its core, soft contact is the art of communicating without creating emotional weight. It is the ability to remain present in someone's weights without making them feel responsible for managing your fears, insecurities, or urgency. It creates a bridge between distance and connection, a way of keeping communication alive without turning it into a source of pressure. Think about how most people communicate when they are afraid of losing someone. Their messages are often driven by an unspoken agenda. They may appear casual on the surface, but underneath is a desperate need for a specific outcome. Why haven't you been talking to me? Do you still care about us? Where is this going? Again, these are natural questions, but timing matters. Psychology teaches us that people become more receptive when they feel safe, and safety rarely emerges from pressure. It emerges from freedom. An avoidant person is often scanning interactions for signs that emotional demands are about to be placed upon them. They may not even be consciously aware of it, yet the moment they sense an expectation they cannot immediately meet, their instinct may be to withdraw. Soft contact removes that threat. Instead of turning every conversation into a relationship discussion, you create interactions that feel light, positive, and emotionally breathable. You communicate because you enjoy the interaction itself, not because you're trying to extract certainty from it. This shift is more profound than it sounds. Most people approach communication as a tool for controlling outcomes. They want the conversation to lead somewhere specific. They want reassurance. They want commitment. They want proof. But genuine connection is not built through control. It is built through invitation. An invitation allows someone to come closer voluntarily. Control attempts to pull them closer against their instincts. One creates comfort. The other creates resistance. This principle reflects something deeper about human nature. We are all more drawn to experiences that feel chosen rather than imposed. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre spoke extensively about freedom as a fundamental aspect of human existence. Whether we realize it or not, we constantly seek environments where our choices feel respected. The soft contact method operates on this principle. It respects another person's autonomy while maintaining your own dignity. That means when you reach out, you do so from a place of abundance rather than need. Your message doesn't carry the emotional burden of "please reassure me." It carries the energy of "I thought of this and wanted to share it." Notice the difference. One seeks validation, the other offers connection. And people can feel that difference, even through a screen. Now, this doesn't mean becoming emotionally detached or pretending you don't care. Authenticity remains essential. The goal isn't to suppress feelings. The goal is to communicate them in a way that doesn't overwhelm the interaction. There is tremendous strength in emotional restraint, not because restraint hides emotion, but because it demonstrates mastery over emotion. Anyone can react impulsively. Anyone can send the text they immediately regret. Anyone can demand answers in moments of uncertainty. What requires real confidence is the ability to pause, reflect, and communicate intentionally. This is where soft contact becomes more than a communication strategy. It becomes a reflection of personal growth. You stop measuring success by how quickly someone responds. You stop interpreting every interaction as evidence of your worth. You stop treating communication as a test you either pass or fail. Instead, you begin engaging from a place of calm self-respect. Ironically, this often creates the very conditions that allow attraction and connection to re-emerge. When people no longer feel pressured to defend their independence, they become far more open to choosing closeness. And that choice is what matters, because relationships thrive not when someone feels obligated to stay, but when they genuinely want to move closer. The soft contact method is ultimately an exercise in emotional intelligence. It teaches you to replace urgency with patience, pressure with presence, and control with trust. And when you learn to communicate in a way that gives another person room to breathe, you may discover something remarkable. People often move toward what feels safe, and nothing feels safer than a connection that asks for nothing while offering something real. Remember this: the strongest message is rarely the one that demands a response. It is the one that makes someone want to respond. After creating space and learning how to communicate through soft contact, the conversation naturally shifts to a deeper question. What kind of person are they experiencing when they interact with you? Because here's something that often gets overlooked. People become so focused on getting an avoidant person back that they forget the most important factor in the equation: the version of themselves that the other person is coming back to. Many people approach relationships as if attraction is something that can be negotiated. They believe that if they explain themselves clearly enough, love deeply enough, or sacrifice enough, the other person will finally recognize their value. But attraction and emotional safety rarely work that way. People do not simply respond to what we say. They respond to how they feel in our presence. And for an avoidant person especially, that feeling matters enormously. One of the greatest misconceptions about avoidance is that they fear intimacy itself. In reality, many of them fear the emotional consequences they associate with intimacy. They may worry about losing independence. They may fear disappointing someone. They may feel overwhelmed by expectations they don't know how to meet. So when they think about moving closer to someone, consciously or unconsciously, they ask a simple question: what will it feel like to be with this person? Will it feel heavy or light? Will it feel demanding or supportive? Will it feel like freedom or obligation? These questions often matter far more than any argument you could make about why the relationship should work. This is why becoming the person they feel safe returning to is so powerful. Notice that I didn't say becoming someone else. I didn't say changing your personality, suppressing your needs, or transforming yourself into whatever you think they want. The goal is not self-abandonment. The goal is self-development. There is a profound difference between the two. Self-abandonment says, I'll become whoever I need to become in order to keep you. Self-development says, I'm going to become the strongest version of myself, regardless of what happens. One is driven by fear. The other is driven by growth. And people are naturally drawn toward growth. When someone sees that your happiness is not entirely dependent on them, something changes. They begin to experience you differently. Your energy becomes less about extracting reassurance and more about sharing a meaningful connection. This is particularly important because anxiety has a way of distorting relationships. When we fear losing someone, our world can begin to shrink. We focus on every text, every delay, every change in behavior. We become consumed by the relationship. Ironically, this often makes the relationship feel heavier for both people. But when you continue building your life, investing in friendships, pursuing goals, developing skills, creating experiences, you become more than someone waiting to be chosen. You become someone actively creating a life worth sharing. And that distinction matters. The philosopher Aristotle argued that flourishing comes from the full expression of our potential. Human beings thrive when they engage with purpose, growth, and meaningful action. Relationships can enhance that flourishing, but they cannot replace it. This is where many people get stuck. They treat love as the source of their identity, instead of allowing it to be an extension of their identity. As a result, every challenge feels catastrophic because so much of their self-worth is tied to one person's response. But confidence emerges when your sense of value becomes internal rather than external. You no longer need constant evidence that someone cares about you because your worth is not under negotiation. And here's the fascinating thing. Avoidant individuals are often highly sensitive to emotional pressure, but they are also highly sensitive to emotional stability. When they encounter someone who remains grounded during uncertainty, who respects boundaries without becoming resentful, who continues growing instead of collapsing into anxiety, they experience something rare. They experience safety. Not safety because demands have disappeared. Safety because emotional chaos has disappeared. That kind of presence is incredibly attractive. Think about the people you admire most. They are rarely the ones desperately trying to prove their value. They are the ones quietly embodying it. Their confidence isn't loud, their strength isn't performative, their self-respect doesn't require constant validation. They simply know who they are. And when you begin developing that same relationship with yourself, something remarkable happens. Whether the avoidant person comes back or not, you win. You become less reactive, less fearful, less dependent on outcomes you cannot control. You stop asking, how do I get them to choose me, and start asking, am I living in a way that reflects my own value? That shift changes everything. Because the truth is that people feel safest returning to someone who has learned how to stand on their own. Not because independence eliminates intimacy, but because healthy intimacy is built upon it. The strongest relationships are not formed by two people desperately holding on to each other. They are formed by two whole individuals choosing each other freely. And that is the real transformation. When your focus shifts from winning someone back to becoming someone worth coming back to. As we arrive at the final part of this conversation, everything we've discussed begins to come together. We've talked about stopping the chase. We've explored the soft contact method. We've examined the importance of becoming someone who feels emotionally safe to return to. But now we come to perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of all, the role of absence, value, and genuine desire. Most people are uncomfortable with absence. The moment someone becomes distant, the instinct is to close the gap as quickly as possible. We live in a world that encourages immediate responses, constant access, and instant reassurance. If someone doesn't reply, we feel compelled to send another message. If someone withdraws, we feel pressure to re-establish connection immediately. Yet human psychology doesn't always work according to the rules of convenience. Some things become clearer when they are no longer constantly available. Some feelings become stronger when they are given room to develop. And some people only fully understand the value of a connection after they have had the opportunity to experience life without it. This is not manipulation. It is simply a reality of human perception. We often notice things most clearly when their presence is no longer guaranteed. Think about how rarely people appreciate certain freedoms until they lose them. Think about how often individuals take routines, friendships, or opportunities for granted until circumstances change. Familiarity can sometimes reduce awareness. Distance can sometimes restore it. This is especially relevant when dealing with avoidant individuals. An avoidant person often spends a significant amount of time managing closeness. Their attention is focused on maintaining space, protecting independence, or regulating emotional intensity. When that pressure disappears, something interesting can happen. Their attention is no longer consumed by escape. Instead, it becomes available for reflection. This is why healthy absence can be so powerful. Not because it forces someone to miss you, because nothing can force genuine longing. Rather, it removes the noise that may have prevented them from recognizing what the connection actually meant. When someone is constantly pursuing us, we can become focused on managing their pursuit. When that pursuit ends, we are left alone with our own thoughts. And thoughts have a way of revealing truths that pressure often conceals. This is where many people become impatient. They create space for a few days, maybe a week, and then panic when they don't immediately see results. They assume nothing is happening, but emotional processing is rarely visible. Growth happens beneath the surface. Reflection happens beneath the surface. Desire often develops beneath the surface. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once observed that much of humanity's struggle comes from an inability to sit quietly and reflect. Modern life amplifies this challenge. We constantly seek distractions from uncertainty. We want immediate answers, but meaningful emotional shifts often require time. The challenge is learning to trust the process without becoming attached to a specific outcome. Notice the distinction. Trusting the process is healthy. Obsessing over the outcome is not. When you obsess over the outcome, every day becomes a test. Every silence becomes evidence. Every interaction becomes something to analyze. But when you trust the process, You understand that your responsibility is not to control another person's emotions. Your responsibility is to create the conditions under which authentic connection can emerge. And authenticity is the key word, because ultimately, what you're hoping for is not a return motivated by guilt, obligation, loneliness, or pressure. You want a return motivated by genuine desire. You want someone to choose the relationship because they recognize its value, not because they were cornered into it. That kind of choice is infinitely more meaningful. The irony is that many people destroy genuine desire by trying to manufacture it. They attempt to convince, persuade, negotiate, and pressure. But desire does not respond well to force. Desire grows in freedom. People treasure what they freely choose. They commit to what feels aligned with their own decision-making. And that is why your role is not to drag someone back into your life. Your role is to remain consistent, grounded, and valuable while allowing them the freedom to decide. This is where patience becomes a form of strength, not passive waiting, not putting your life on hold, real patience. The kind that allows you to continue growing, continue living, and continue thriving, regardless of what another person chooses. Because here's the deeper truth beneath everything we've discussed. The ultimate goal was never simply to get an avoidant person back. The ultimate goal was to become someone who no longer needs to chase love in order to feel worthy of it. When that transformation occurs, something remarkable happens. You stop operating from fear. You stop clinging to outcomes. You stop treating another person's decision as the final verdict on your value. And from that place, your presence changes. Your energy changes. Your relationships change. Sometimes the avoidant person returns. Sometimes they don't. But either way, you've gained something far more valuable than a specific result. You've gained self-respect. And self-respect has a magnetic quality that no strategy can ever replace. So remember this. The people who inspire the deepest desire are rarely the ones demanding to be chosen. They are the ones living so fully that choosing them becomes an opportunity, not an obligation.